Chapter 1. The Golden Illusion. In the bustling city of Metropolis, where skyscrapers pierced the clouds and the streets never slept, lived a man named Oliver Cadwell. Oliver was known far and wide as the epitome of success. He had everything that one could ever dream of: a mansion perched on the edge of the city, luxury cars lining his driveway, and a bank account that seemed limitless. He was the CEO of a global tech company, and his face frequently graced the covers of magazines that lauded his achievements. But beneath the surface of Oliver's glittering life, something was missing. He had spent his entire existence chasing after wealth, believing that money would bring him happiness, security, and respect. In his younger years, Oliver had worked tirelessly, sacrificing sleep, friendships, and even his health in the pursuit of success. He rarely saw his family, and the few relationships he had were transactional at best. One evening, as Oliver sat alone in his expansive living room, the weight of silence pressed down on him. The room was filled with expensive art and designer furniture, but there was no one to share it with. The large, empty space echoed with a profound loneliness. As he looked out at the city lights twinkling in the distance, a thought crept into his mind. Was this really the happiness he had worked so hard for? Oliver decided to distract himself by taking his car for a drive. As he sped through the city streets, he passed by a small park. He noticed a group of children playing together, their laughter ringing out into the night. A young couple sat on a nearby bench, sharing a quiet moment as they watched their children play. The scene was simple, yet it struck a chord within Oliver. These people, with their modest lives, seemed to have something he didn't: genuine joy. He parked his car and walked over to the park, finding a bench a little way off from the couple. He watched as the children chased each other, their faces lit up with pure happiness. The couple, though not dressed in expensive clothes or adorned with jewelry, radiated contentment. Oliver realized that what they had couldn't be bought with all the money in the world. As he sat there, a memory from his childhood surfaced, one of playing in a similar park with his parents, feeling loved and cared for, without a care in the world. Back then, life was simple. The joy of spending time with his family was all he needed to be happy. For the first time in years, Oliver felt a pang of longing for something money couldn't buy: connection, love, and true happiness. It was a realization that all the wealth he had amassed over the years had done little to fill the void in his heart. Instead of happiness, his riches had brought isolation, fear of losing what he had, and a never-ending desire for more. The night wore on, and the park began to empty. Oliver sat quietly, reflecting on the choices he had made. He knew something needed to change, but he wasn't sure where to begin. All he knew was that the life he was living, despite all its luxury, was not fulfilling. The illusion that money could bring him happiness was beginning to shatter. And so, Oliver's journey to discover the true meaning of happiness began. He didn't know where it would lead him, but he was ready to find out. For the first time in a long while, Oliver felt a spark of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, happiness wasn't something he could buy, but something he could find if only he was willing to look in the right places.
Chapter 2. The Empty Mansion.
The following morning, Oliver woke up feeling a strange mix of emotions. For years, his routine had been monotonous yet comfortable. Wake up early, rush to the office, bury himself in work, and return home late to an empty house, but today he couldn't shake the lingering thoughts from the night before. The image of the happy family in the park haunted him, casting a shadow over his grand, empty mansion. He sipped his morning coffee in the vast dining room. The silence felt oppressive. The table, large enough to seat 12, was set impeccably for one. The walls were adorned with paintings from famous artists, but they felt cold and distant, lacking the warmth of human connection. Oliver decided to take a day off from work, something he hadn't done in years. He told himself it was to clear his mind, but deep down, he knew he was searching for something more. As he wandered aimlessly through his home, each room told the same story: luxury without life, opulence without warmth. He entered his study, where he kept a collection of books, many of which he had never read. One book, in particular, caught his eye: a dusty, old photo album tucked away on a high shelf. He reached for it, brushing off the dust, and opened it to find photographs from his childhood. As he flipped through the pages, memories flooded back. There were pictures of him playing in the park with his parents, family vacations, and holidays spent together. He saw the faces of his parents, smiling and carefree, and his younger self, filled with joy and laughter. These were the days before his obsession with success took over, back when happiness was simple and genuine. Oliver's parents had passed away years ago, and he realized with a pang of guilt that he hadn't visited their graves in years. He had been too busy building his empire, convincing himself that this was what they would have wanted for him. But now, looking at their faces, he wondered if they would be proud of the man he had become. The emptiness he felt was overwhelming. He had spent so much time chasing after wealth that he had lost sight of what truly mattered. The realization that his parents had lived modestly but happily contrasted sharply with his own life. They had valued family, love, and the simple pleasures of life, things that he had neglected in his pursuit of success. Determined to make a change, Oliver decided to leave the mansion for the day. He needed to reconnect with the world beyond his gilded cage. He grabbed his keys and left, not knowing where he was headed, but certain that he couldn't stay in that empty house any longer. He found himself driving aimlessly through the city, eventually ending up in a neighborhood far removed from his usual haunts. The streets were narrow, lined with small, quaint houses, and the people here seemed to move at a slower, more deliberate pace. There was a sense of community, a feeling that life was lived here, not just survived. As he walked through the neighborhood, he passed by a small cafe. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of soft chatter drew him inside. The cafe was cozy, filled with mismatched furniture, warm lighting, and the hum of conversation. People sat together, sharing stories and laughter, and Oliver felt a pang of envy for the simplicity of their lives. He ordered a coffee and sat by the window, watching the world go by. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of peace, as if the weight of his wealth and success was beginning to lift. The cafe was a far cry from the luxury restaurants he usually frequented, but it felt more genuine, more real. As he sipped his coffee, he overheard a conversation between two elderly women at the table next to him. They were discussing their grandchildren, sharing stories of their achievements and little quirks. Their faces lit up with joy as they spoke, and Oliver couldn't help but smile. They had so little in terms of material wealth, but they seemed richer in ways that truly mattered. The day passed slowly, and Oliver spent it wandering through the neighborhood, observing the lives of the people around him. He saw parents walking hand in hand with their children, friends meeting for lunch, and elderly couples sitting together on park benches. The more he saw, the more he realized that the happiness he had been searching for wasn't tied to wealth or status. It was found in relationships, in connection, in the simple moments of life. But as the sun began to set, Oliver found himself back in his car, feeling both lighter and more determined than he had in years. He knew that change wouldn't come overnight, but he was ready to start. For the first time, he felt that maybe, just maybe, he could find the happiness that had eluded him for so long. With a newfound resolve, Oliver headed home, not to his mansion, but to a new beginning. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he was ready to discover what truly mattered, one small step at a time. Chapter 3. The Unexpected Guest. Following days brought a whirlwind of change for Oliver. Determined to break free from the emptiness of his old life, he began to take small steps toward rediscovering what truly mattered. He spent less time in his office, delegating more responsibilities to his trusted executives. Instead, he ventured out into the city, exploring the neighborhoods he had once overlooked, engaging with people he would have previously passed by without a second thought. One evening, as Oliver sat on the front steps of his mansion, gazing at the sunset, he heard a knock at the gate. It was unusual. Few people ever visited him at home without an appointment, and certainly not at this hour. Curiosity piqued. He walked over and opened the gate to find a young woman standing there. She was in her mid-20s, dressed casually in jeans and a simple blouse, with a backpack slung over her shoulder. "Hi, Mr. Caldwell," she said, a hint of nervousness in her voice. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I've heard a lot about you. I'm Rachel Miller." Oliver searched his memory, trying to place her, but came up empty. "I'm sorry, Rachel, but have we met before?" "No, we haven't," she admitted. "But I know who you are. My father used to work for your company. He was a janitor in the old building downtown before he retired." Oliver nodded, still unsure where this was leading. "It's nice to meet you, Rachel. How can I help you?" Rachel hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I know this might sound strange, but I'm here because I think you could help me. My father used to talk about you all the time. He admired how hard you worked and how successful you became. He always told me that if I ever needed advice or guidance, you'd be the person to ask." Oliver was taken aback. The idea that a janitor had spoken of him in such a way was humbling. He motioned for Rachel to come inside, leading her to the living room. They sat down, and Rachel began to share her story. Rachel had recently graduated from college with a degree in social work. She was passionate about helping others, but was struggling to find her place in the world. She had grown up in a modest household where money was always tight, but love and support were abundant. Her father had worked hard to provide for the family, and although they didn't have much, they were happy. "I want to make a difference," Rachel said, her eyes shining with determination. "But the world is so focused on money and status. Sometimes I feel like I'm swimming against the current. My father always believed in you, even though you were so different from us. He said you understood what it meant to work hard for something. I guess that's why I'm here to ask for your advice." Oliver listened intently, struck by the sincerity of her words. He saw a younger version of himself in Rachel, full of ambition and hope, yet facing the daunting challenge of navigating a world that often valued wealth over purpose. Her visit was unexpected, but it stirred something in him, an opportunity to connect with someone on a level he hadn't experienced in years. He thought carefully before speaking. "Rachel, first of all, thank you for coming to me. It's an honor that your father thought so highly of me. But I have to be honest with you, I've made mistakes along the way. I've spent most of my life chasing after money, believing it would bring me happiness. But the truth is, it hasn't." Rachel looked surprised. "But you've achieved so much. You have everything anyone could ever want." Oliver shook his head. "Everything material, yes. But happiness, no. I've come to realize that money can't fill the void in your heart. It can't replace love, friendship, or the sense of purpose that comes from truly helping others. If I could go back, I'd do things differently. I'd focus more on the people around me, on building meaningful relationships, and on making a positive impact on the world." Rachel absorbed his words, nodding slowly. "So what should I do?" "Follow your heart," Oliver advised. "You have something that many people lose along the way, a genuine desire to help others. Don't let the pressure to succeed financially overshadow that. It's important to make a living, but it's even more important to live a life you're proud of. If you stay true to yourself and your values, you'll find happiness in the work you do, even if it doesn't bring you great wealth." Rachel smiled, relief evident on her face. "Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. I needed to hear that." As she prepared to leave, Oliver felt a surge of gratitude. Her visit had reminded him of something he had forgotten, the power of genuine human connection. He realized that helping Rachel had brought him more satisfaction than any business deal ever could. "Rachel," he said as she reached the door, "if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. And if you're ever in doubt about your path, remember that happiness comes not from what you have, but from what you give." Rachel nodded, her smile widening. "I won't forget. Thank you again." As she walked away, Oliver stood in the doorway, watching her disappear into the night. He felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't experienced in years. Perhaps, he thought, this was the beginning of something new, not just for Rachel, but for himself as well. The mansion that had once felt so empty now seemed a little less so. For the first time in a long while, Oliver felt like he was on the right path. Chapter 4. A Seed of Change. Oliver's encounter with Rachel had left a lasting impact on him. The conversation replayed in his mind over the next few days, bringing with it a renewed sense of purpose. For so long, he had been consumed by the pursuit of success and wealth, but Rachel had reminded him of the importance of helping others and living a meaningful life. Her visit had planted a seed of change within him, and it began to grow one morning. As Oliver was sipping his coffee in the sunlit kitchen, he found himself thinking about how he could make a difference. He had the means to do so much more than just run a successful business. He could use his resources to improve the lives of others. The question was how to start. That afternoon, Oliver decided to pay a visit to the community where Rachel had grown up. He wanted to see for himself the world that existed outside of his wealthy circles. As he drove through the modest neighborhood, he noticed the small, family-owned shops, the children playing in the streets, and the sense of camaraderie that seemed to pervade the area. It was a stark contrast to the isolation he often felt in his own life. He parked his car and began walking through the neighborhood. As he passed by a small, run-down playground, he saw a group of children playing soccer on a patch of worn grass. Their clothes were a little ragged, and the equipment they used was old, but their laughter was infectious. Oliver stopped to watch them, feeling a pang of nostalgia for his own childhood. An elderly man sitting on a nearby bench noticed Oliver and smiled at him. "You're not from around here, are you?" the man asked, his voice warm and welcoming. "No, I'm not," Oliver admitted, walking over to the bench. "I just wanted to see the neighborhood. It's a beautiful place." Taking root, he wasn't just throwing money at a problem, he was investing in people, in a community that had been overlooked for too long. Over the next few weeks, Oliver threw himself into the project. He hired contractors to renovate the playground, adding new equipment, repairing the field, and planting trees to provide shade. He worked with local businesses to secure donations for the community center, and he personally funded the repairs needed to keep it open. Oliver felt a spark of excitement. Here was a tangible way to make a difference. "I'd like to help," he said, determination in his voice. "I could start by renovating the playground and supporting the community center." George smiled, a look of approval on his face. "That would mean a lot to everyone around here. It's not just about the money. You know, it's about showing that someone cares. It gives people hope." Oliver nodded, feeling a sense of purpose taking root. He wasn't just throwing money at a problem, he was investing in people, in a community that had been overlooked for too long. Over the next few weeks, Oliver threw himself into the project. He hired contractors to renovate the playground, adding new equipment, repairing the field, and planting trees to provide shade. He worked with local businesses to secure donations for the community center, and he personally funded the repairs needed to keep it open. The work progressed. Oliver spent more and more time in the neighborhood. He got to know the families, the shop owners, and the children who played in the park. He attended community meetings, listened to their concerns, and offered his support. The more time he spent there, the more he realized how much he had been missing out on. These people, with their modest lives, had something he had lost: connection, community, and a sense of belonging. The day the playground reopened was a celebration. The children raced to try out the new equipment, their laughter filling the air. Families gathered, sharing food and stories, and the sense of joy was palpable. Oliver stood off to the side, watching the scene unfold with a smile. For the first time in years, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment, a happiness that no amount of money could buy. As the sun began to set, Rachel appeared beside him, a smile on her face. "You did something amazing here, Mr. Cadwell," she said, her voice full of admiration. Oliver shook his head modestly. "I didn't do it alone. This community is what made it possible. I just provided a little help." Rachel looked around at the people, the smiles on their faces, and nodded. "Maybe, but you made a difference, and you found something in the process, didn't you?" Oliver smiled, the truth of her words settling in his heart. "Yes, I did. I found out that happiness isn't about what you have. It's about what you give." Rachel's eyes sparkled with warmth. "I think my father would be proud of you." Oliver felt a lump in his throat. "I hope so, Rachel. I really hope so." As the night continued, Oliver mingled with the people, sharing in their stories, their struggles, and their joys. The mansion he would return to that night didn't seem so empty anymore, because he knew he was no longer alone. He had found something far more valuable than wealth. He had found a community, a purpose, and a sense of belonging. And with that, the seed of change within Oliver began to flourish, setting the stage for a new chapter in his life, one filled not with the pursuit of riches, but with the pursuit of true happiness, the kind that comes from giving back and connecting with others.